Hello again and welcome once again to Wizard World Virtual Experiences as the crowd emojis wildly. You can also applaud from your home, but make sure we see your love via emoji. Give us those thumbs up, give us those hearts, shout out, and show us all of those emojis that you can engage with on Twitch and YouTube. We are streaming to you completely free and live on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube, bringing that Comic-Con life to the comfort and safety of your home. This panel is free, but don't forget that in addition to this panel, there are some paid live experiences as well. In fact, immediately following this panel, at the top of the next hour, depending on what time zone you're in, our next guest, well, I'm going to give a awesome intro to in just a bit, will be joining us for some live one-on-one chats. That's right. You can hang out in Zoom with Mr. Dolph Lundgren in just a bit. So definitely purchase those, but just know that they are on sale throughout the rest of this panel, and then they will be happening at the top of the next hour. So definitely take advantage of those once-in-a-lifetime experiences. Whether you're watching this live or later in the week, just know that in addition to the live video chats, which will take place today, Dolph is also participating in video recorded messages and autographs. Those will be on sale at wizardworldvirtual.com. Again, that's wizardworldvirtual.com. So take advantage of those. Don't forget to hit up the vault, wizardworldvault.com. You can see the little logo in my back corner there. That is our best attempt at an online convention floor. So we miss doing physical conventions. We can't wait to see you again in person. But for the time being, we are online. We're reaching folks from around the world, and you can support our artists and vendors and also purchase memorabilia and signed works of art from our past conventions, both virtual and physical, at wizardworldvault.com. So definitely check that out. And continue to follow us at Wizard World. We have some amazing shows coming up. Obviously, we're about to talk to Dolph Lundgren, the legend, in just a few minutes. But we have some stars, voiceover stars from animation happening tomorrow. Lark Voorhees from Saved by the Bell and Morgan Fairchild from Everything will be joining us on February 6th. We have a horror holiday weekend. February 11th, Bruce Campbell will be joining us to do some horror trivia. And then we have the cast from Hatchet and Candyman on Saturday the 13th. In addition to Legally Blonde on the 14th. So check that out. We also just announced Clerks and The Walking Dead. So continue to follow us for those amazing experiences. I could not say it better myself. Joshua Palace just chimed in with the very awesome phrase here. Dolph Lundgren is an icon, a legend, and a true inspirational artist in every sense of the word. Total respect to you, Mr. Lundgren. Let us give him his intro and welcome him out onto the virtual stage. He is an actor, director, filmmaker, and martial artist. He holds the ranking of 4th Dan black belt in Kyokushin karate and was European champion in 1980 and 81. After a very brief cameo in A View to Kill, he debuted as Ivan Drago in the classic Rocky IV, followed by He-Man in Masters of the Universe. He would then star in some of the most fun action movies of the 80s, including Red Scorpion, the original Punisher, I Come in Peace, and my personal favorite, Little Showdown in Tokyo, alongside Brandon Lee. In the 90s, he continued. He co-starred with Jean-Claude Van Damme as Sergeant Andrew Scott in the classic action sci-fi film series, the Universal Soldier series, not only Universal Soldier, but then returned for Four Generation and Day of Reckoning. He joined Keanu Reeves as Carl Honig in the tech thriller Johnny Mnemonic. He would continue to star in numerous action films and then would begin directing as well, such films as The Defender, The Russian Specialist. He rejoined his Rocky co-star Sylvester Stallone as Gunnar Jensen in The Expendables 1, 2, and 3. And fingers crossed for 4, and reprised the role of Ivan Drago in Creed 2. Most recently, you saw him in fan favorite Sharknado 5, Aquaman, and season 5 of Arrow. This year, we cannot wait to hear him in Minions: The Rise of Gru, and he returns to the director and actor chair in Castle Falls, which should be coming out later this year. We hope we can talk a little bit about that. He cannot be defeated. He has the power. Please welcome to the virtual stage the legendary action icon, Dolph Lundgren.
Thanks, Mike.
What's up, Dolph? How's it going?
I'm impressed.
Oh my gosh, Dolph, no.
With that?
Don't be impressed with me. I'm impressed with you, sir. You, as a child of the 80s and 90s, you are a legend to me. I know you're a legend to so many other fans out there for all of your work in not only action films, but just films in general, and then TV series and your work as a martial artist. So we appreciate you here today. Thank you so much. How have you been doing lately? I know it's been a tough year for a lot of folks, but we're able to connect via this digital form. So, how are you doing? How have you been holding up this past year?
Yeah, it's been interesting. Been a difficult year in many ways.
For sure.
I was in Europe a little bit. I started a film in March that got shut down called Castle Falls, the one you mentioned. Shut down in Alabama. Then we went back to LA. I was here for months and then went back for about 4 months. Went back there in October, and then I'm editing that film now. And
very cool.
Otherwise, everything else was postponed. All the other projects, including Expendables 4, like you talked about, that was postponed till next year. A bunch of other things were postponed. I guess I just had more time to go to the gym and relax, I guess, and be with my loved ones, which I think was kind of a wake-up call for me this year, that it doesn't have to be necessarily as high speed. Life doesn't have to be as quick as it was prior to COVID. You kind of realize that other moments are important.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome sentiment. I think that's one thing that a lot of us have learned is that there can be, life can go slower and it's okay, and making connections with your loved ones is great. And so, yeah, we definitely doubled down on that. Speaking of going to the gym, Todd Tremper just said, Dolph, you look amazing right now. So people are noticing all of your work there. Super typist, we have Dolph, during this whole time, it's been tough because, the biggest thing that we're missing is those kind of physical interactions, those physical connections. But fans have been just super stoked and super excited to be able to experience these kind of situations, albeit digital. We have people tuning in right now across the country: NOLA, Washington, California, Pennsylvania, Atlanta, Ohio, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Oregon, Virginia, Iowa, Wisconsin in the house. Super typist at Super Typist just said it's midnight in Scotland, but this is worth staying awake for. So you've got fans from around the globe right now tuning in. So we appreciate you being here. I want to kick things off just talking about your early films. A lot of fan questions are coming in and coming through. So we're going to get to those in a second. But, you had the small cameo. You were obviously training as a martial artist. You had a small cameo in the film A View to Kill. But then you immediately get a huge role in one of the most successful sports franchises of all time, Rocky, and Rocky 4 is Ivan Drago. Immediately following that, you play one of the most iconic characters of all time, He-Man in Masters of the Universe. And I got representing a little He-Man here today. Talk a little bit about, most actors, they kind of trickle into things, right? They work on a few films here and there, and then they hit their break. You hit your break. You were in one of a huge franchise right off the bat. Talk about what that was like back in the day, just, being involved with Rocky 4 and just really kind of getting into the career so early on.
I don't know whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, because, there's one thought would be, it's good that you're starting to start off with smaller movies and you kind of learn the ropes, you learn about acting, you learn about the business, and, so you're kind of more seasoned if you do hit it big. Whereas in my case, I hit it big very quickly within a year, a little more of having started acting. I was in Rocky 4 and that was a huge hit. And I think it was very tough for me to absorb that,
Sure.
A kid from Sweden, chemical engineering student, been, walking around, on campus, shaking test tubes and carrying books and being in the dojo. Well, martial arts is kind of a internal sport, and you're very respectful. It shows a lot of, you have a lot of dignity and respect for yourself, for the others. And show business is it's a tough world, Hollywood. So I was kind of tossed into that. I mean, look, I was very happy to get that part, and I worked really hard on that role.
Yeah.
But once I hit it, once that movie was a hit, it was kind of like like a whirlwind that just swept me away for years and years before I knew what had happened really.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and again, the fans are loving this right now. Fun comment from Audra Jo Hull said, "I was not prepared for Dolph to be so nice. I've always just loved to hate him throughout this thing." I mean, that's a testament to you as an actor. You've played the lead and the cop and the good guy a lot, but early on you played the bad guy a lot, and if you continue to do so, what is that like? I mean, you have 9. I think someone on Reddit or YouTube figured it out. There are not exactly 9 lines from Rocky 4, but they are 9 of the most iconic lines in the history of movies. We all know them and love them. And you were a villain, but what was that like? Sort of being that villain up front and getting that vitriol of from the fans, of Rocky.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean,
yeah.
I had to take the job. I needed the job, and I couldn't.
Sure.
And I worked on that character, and of course, I played him from the inside. Basically a guy who was victim of the system, who'd been told what to do. You have to kill this guy. You have to do this. You have to do that. So for me, it wasn't a big deal really, but of course it became a big deal because a lot of people loved Apollo Creed. Now he's dead. Even though I didn't write the script, but
yeah,
beyond that. So I think it was hard to deal with, and sometimes I reflect on it now as well, that after 35 more years in the business, most people know me a little more. I mean, not everybody, but some people only know me for Rocky 4 or playing the bad guys. But a lot of people know me for who I am. Also, that's sort of gone away to some extent, but sometimes reflect on when I direct movies and act in movies. Sometimes the people who play the bad guy are the nicest guy he's the nicest guy on set. And sometimes, unfortunately, you could have the opposite happening too, where, somebody who has the driving force to always be portrayed as perfect and heroic may have other issues as a person, so you have to separate that. I learned to separate the character and the actor.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And you see the subtlety even in the machine that is Ivan Drago. He's being pressured by the system. You know what I mean? And then what a nice sentiment at the end of the film. When it's kind of like, hey, we can all work together. We can all kind of do this. So some awesome stuff there for sure. I have a quick question from Bonnie Toit who asks, and again, ton of fan questions coming in already. So we'll try to get to as many as we can. But Bonnie Toit wants to know: did Sylvester Stallone one of the best parts of the boxing in the Rocky movies is they feel so visceral and so real. And Bonnie wants to know, did Sylvester Stallone get any punches in? Were any of those live contact like it appears on screen?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
He did. And I hit him too, hit me. I was a fighter at the time. I was used to knockdown karate, full contact karate. So it's a big deal for me, Carl Weathers hit me a few times. He got a little nervous because Stallone knew me. We'd worked together for 6 months. We trained for 6 months here in LA. So we sparred every 6 days a week. We lift weights 6 days a week. So he knew me. He knew I was a nice guy. I was just a kid, who happened to be a good fighter. But Carl Weathers, on the other hand, had never met me. So when I showed up in Vegas to shoot that fight, and we never rehearsed either. I just rehearsed my moves with somebody else.
Oh, wow.
I think when we showed up, I think we rehearsed maybe the day before. And you could tell him looking at me like, who the hell is this guy? Because I was fully in character, this big guy, who looked like a machine. And obviously he'd read the script too, so he knew what was going to happen. So he kind of hauled off and hit me a couple of times. But I didn't really care because, like I said, I was happy to be there.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so fun. I want to move on to your next big film. Again, you immediately moved from Rocky IV to playing He-Man, the iconic character. And again, as someone growing up in the 80s, he was one of my favorite superheroes at the time, if you will. Johnny Goddard says, hey, Dolph, you did a great job playing him, He-Man, in the movie from your fan. We also have some folks. Thomas Donald Moore says, I'm curious, what were your thoughts? And here's the thing with He-Man for me is there are movies that happen in the moment, right? And they instantly are critiqued and criticized and box office this and box office that. But I think the most important aspect of a film is one that's long lasting and continues to last. And Masters of the Universe is one of those that will continue, I think, through generations to be a fan favorite and a cult favorite. And you can see the fans right now. What tell us a little bit about, for Thomas Donald Moore, what it was like taking on that iconic role of He-Man at the time, and how it feels that people are still watching it today and still loving it today.
Well, obviously, it does feel good that people are still watching it, and
yeah,
and I notice when I go to Comic Cons, it is a favorite, and like you mentioned, it did have problems during production. Canon Films went down. They didn't really have the money to properly finish the picture, and so the box office wasn't as good as it could have been. But there are a lot of box office hits that people will never remember, and is never
exactly.
You have a lot of other pictures that didn't do that well that become huge, classics. And it's like somebody said, it takes 7, 8, 10 years to know what's a classic movie. You can't just, it takes at least 10 years. So for some reason, I guess Masters of the Universe is, and I think it's, it was difficult for me because I played as Russian bad guy, and now I'm supposed to play this kind of heroic American hero. And,
yeah.
I didn't have Stallone there to guide me, but I was the star of the picture, and
yeah.
I had the director who was pretty good, but he was also kind of a guy from the theme park world. So it was quite difficult. I wasn't sure about it, and I was frustrated that maybe I'd made the wrong choice playing a toy.
Sure. Because
in those days, playing a toy or a cartoon character wasn't very good. Not like now, everybody's standing in line to be part of my universe, Marvel or what's the other one? Marvel and
DC.
DC, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was really no matter how it was a tough shoot. We did like 54 nights in a row.
Wow.
Whittier. So 54. There was a record ever. I think the longest ever After Hours, which is that Scorsese picture, which
is crazy.
Like 60 nights in a row. But when I see the movie, I'm sort of I'm pleased. It's kind of a cute movie. It's
totally
one of the most charming movies I think I made.
Oh, I agree. And fans are sounding off right now. Lucas Hannon said you made the right choice. You did great. People are talking about showing their kids He-Man these days. Lucas Hannon says, I love Dolph as He-Man. Raghu Sitharaman says, what was it like working with the legendary Frank Langella on that film? Obviously, my gosh, he brought Skeletor to life, and it was so good.
Yeah, he was extremely impressive. I mean,
yeah.
He was in makeup for 3 hours every morning, and then he had to move through those old school silicone pads they put on your face. It's really difficult, but he did a great job. And I didn't at the time really know what a great actor he was. I didn't really know of his history, but just seeing the movie, or people are very he added so much to it. I guess in one way. Yeah, he was playing a great villain, which is what I ended up doing as well.
That's so fun. Speaking of iconic characters, you mentioned Marvel and DC. You obviously got to do a little DC action recently, but let's start with Marvel. You played the original film version of The Punisher, and another film, that it's not widely distributed today because it was made not in America, but the fan fervor on YouTube for The Punisher and the amount of outpouring of love of your take on such an iconic character is huge. I mean, people, Raghu said he was great as The Punisher. Also, who's another fan that just tuned in on that? Oh yeah, Cyclone 5 said about The Punisher as well, and talking about that. Talk a little bit about bringing that iconic character to life, and then what it feels now that a lot of people, and this is no disrespect to Ray Stevenson, Thomas Jane, to John Bernthal on the TV versions, but many people still recognize you as the best Punisher. But it's a tough film to get access to. What are your feelings on that film?
Well, it was a tough shoot. It was in Australia, and I dyed my hair black. And in those days, all the hair dyes were really solid. It stayed black for 6 months afterwards. Very dark brown. and I did a lot of training for it. Robert Kamen, who was the screenwriter who ended up writing movies like Taken and Karate. Well, he wrote The Karate Kid as well.
Yeah.
Good director. I did a lot of fighting. They brought some karate fighters from Tokyo. These two guys, Kyokushin fighters. Never been on a film set. They thought they were going to fight me for real. So they were a little bit nervous because they thought, oh shit, we're going to have to fight this guy. We don't want to lose. But then we explained to them, no, wait a second. There's a script. You have to lose. So one of them was in tears. He was really bad. His family was going to disown him because he lost a fight against me and all of that. So it was an interesting experience. I think I did a big stunt at the beginning of the movie that was cut out and then the edit, because the movie starts actually with me being, I think his name is Frank Castle, right? Before he becomes the Punisher. So that was cut out. So I hurt my back on that one. I did a high fall into high fall. So I remember I did that. That was an interesting experience because I decided I don't want to be a stuntman. But I think, I think I feel pretty good about it. It was nice to work with Lou Gossett Jr. and it was just one of the experiences. Like I told you before, my life was kind of just spiraled into something there, which I hadn't really planned. When I started acting, I didn't really think, I want to be an action star. I just wanted to act because there was something in it that I needed, I guess, to express myself. So.
Yeah, no, that's so cool to hear and very interesting. Again, Saint8931 said, I love the original Punisher. Aaron J. Official says Dolph Lundgren is the best Punisher. Joshua Palace is saying live, Dolph was epic as the Punisher, haunting, powerful performance, total respect to this legend. So, I mean, it stuck with fans. And I mean, we've barely scratched the surface so far. I want to get into, you played these like iconic sort of comic book characters and TV characters and such, and joined obviously Sylvester Stallone. But then you really started to break out into a lot of original films that became very iconic of the 80s and action films of that time. I mentioned a bunch of them in your intro. Red Scorpion, I Come in Peace, a fun sci-fi film. My favorite, my personal favorite, is Little Showdown in Tokyo, and I know some other folks as well are shouting that one out. And asking a little bit about working with Brandon Lee. I'm curious about working with Brandon Lee, but then also those were the films where you mentioned in Punisher, you got some martial artists on film for the first time, but some of those films were really where you got to start to show off your martial arts ability on screen. What was that like finally moving into those films where you got to, do a lot of those martial arts stunts on camera and kind of displaying that? Well,
it was satisfying one way because when I first came to America, I was still fighting. I was going to fight in the World Championships that year.
Yeah.
I was in New York and I got that, started auditioning for Rocky IV.
Wow.
I was going to be a boxer for a while in New York at Gleason's Gym there, back in, before the Rocky IV. So I sort of gave up on karate and I missed it. I missed martial arts. So it was kind of on a personal level, it was very satisfying to be able to train again with my old sensei and, bring that back into my life with movies like Showdown in Little Tokyo and The Punisher and even a bit in Red Scorpion.
Yeah.
And, it's when I look at my, you live inside, I'm trapped inside this body, this is a Swedish kid kind of insecure or whatever. Like when I went to school. And when I look at old pictures now, it's like, yeah, I'm not surprised I ended up playing all those type of characters because look how I used to look, my physique and the face and even the stoic kind of presence. I mean, it's obvious that I ended up playing those guys, and I played so many of them that when I go to Comic-Con, I have like 5 or 6 of these guys, He-Man and Ivan Drago and the Punisher and, they have the guy from Gunnar Jensen.
Gunnar Jensen.
They're it's strange because always when I did it, I always felt like a normal person. I didn't really plan it. It just fate caught up with me, I guess.
That's awesome. What was it like? You have the opportunity, speaking of martial artists, to work numerous times with Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa, and some fans are asking about Cary. Yeah, again, obviously the villain in Showdown in Little Tokyo, then a couple other films later. But what has it been like to work with that legendary martial artist?
He's a great guy. I mean, I had so much fun with him. And there's an example of the most gracious, humble, nicest human being playing a bad guy all the time. Yeah, I think I've killed him 3 times, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Tokyo, Bridge of Dragons, I think it was. I did it from Bulgaria, and then another one.
Skin trade, right?
Skin trade, yeah, skin trade.
Yeah.
And he's a real martial artist, and he's a nice guy. And yeah, just when looking back at it now, it's sort of like this sort of time in Hollywood where it sort of started with Bruce Lee a little bit in the 70s, and then kind of bloomed in the 80s with Stallone and Arnold and Van Damme and Seagal, myself. I mean, people who had real physical skills and, could act, but could also actually do physical stunts and fights. And then that kind of, we're still there to some extent. There are a few guys left, but movies now, action films are so CGI driven that, you cannot do everything yourself. And even if you could, but then on the other hand, now the trend is to put, Academy Award winning actors to play the superhero. Yeah. And most of those guys aren't martial arts trained, because how can you do both? There's no way. So then you gotta support them with stunt doubles and so forth. So I'm happy to have been part of that part of Hollywood, because it's a special part, and who knows if it'll ever come back, but I don't know, maybe not, but you have to be part of it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, again, as a child of the 80s and the 90s, I know I appreciate it. We have a lot of fans in the chat right now talking about those were real. Jeff Walters said those were real movies. You guys were really doing those things. And yeah, sometimes there were stunt folks in there, but you were blowing things up and fighting. One of the classic examples of that is the Universal Soldier series. Now we're in the 90s, right? And sci-fi is so huge. And so we get these kind of fun hybrid sci-fi action movies. You mentioned Jean-Claude a second ago. What was that like? My gosh. First being in the original film and then coming back for the sequels. Again, one of the best action franchises of that time. Talk a little bit about your experience playing another bad guy, but a bad guy with some heart, in the Universal Soldier series.
Bad guy was in trauma.
Some trauma, yeah.
PTSD. No, but look, that was right. Those films came right at the end of that era, I think, mid 90s.
Yep.
Most things started changing. I think it's Sly, my buddy Sly said at some point, I remember he told me in an interview where for Expendables, like once Batman, I guess it was Michael, what's his name? First Batman, Michael Keaton. Once he pulled on the muscle suit, everything changed.
Yeah.
Because he didn't need the muscles anymore. I mean, if you look like Arnold Schwarzenegger as Conan, I mean, that's it. Couldn't even make a muscle suit like him, but he was real. So I think that the Universal Soldier came at the end of that. And, the stunts were real. I mean, running down the Hoover Dam, doing that, those are real people out there.
Oh, so cool.
And actually, my stunt double got caught, because I did a little bit of rappelling at the end, but he did the whole thing, and he got caught, and he got stuck halfway down the dam. So
wow.
Van Damme's stunt double, who was his ex-Navy SEAL, American guy, he went down to get him loose, and when he tried to get him loose, the wire looped around his finger, one of his fingers, and took his finger off. But he still got the right loose. He got the guy loose. So that was special experience. Of course, working with Van Damme, who I didn't really know. I don't think I'd seen his movies, but I realized he was very smart and really knew his stuff, knew his fights, very smart about his image, and we had a good time together. I mean, at the beginning it was a little contentious because we were starting at equal billing, and I think there's a little bit of competition going on there. So
yeah.
When we're shirtless and people ripped. But apart from that, I had a great experience, and also the Golden Eric, the great director who.
Great director.
Was kind of big movie. Coming back for the sequels was fun as well. John Himes did a great job on one of the sequels. I think it was the third one, which was really good. Actually, the one starring I think that's one of stars Scott Adkins, probably. Yeah, it was really interesting. So I think they're working on rebooting that franchise, as of course Masters and a few others.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of iconic characters that you played, and then your contemporaries played at the time that are coming back in different variations for sure. I know I speak on for myself, but on behalf of all the fans, when I love to hear the story that Dolph Lundgren and Jean-Claude Van Damme were actually at each other, not only as characters, but as actors, shirtless in there in that final scene with the rain coming down. Just fun to hear. Obviously things have smoothed out since then, but just a funny story.
Yeah, we had one incident in Cannes. When the film premiered at the film festival in France the following year, and I was there with my fiancée at the time, and to be now she's my ex-wife, but she was my wife for 20 years.
Sure.
And we were on the steps of the Palais Theater, which is where I take over photos. There's 500 photographers, we drove over, and Van Damme said, "Oh, we should just." Listen, we should do this big fight, like you push me, I push you back, something for the camera. You think so? Yeah, this would be good, So then we get there and we end up talking, and he pushes me, and I push him, but of course I forgot I'm a pretty strong guy, so he goes flying back into his bodyguard, and then my wife didn't know what was going on, so of course people thought it was real. So I heard
my gosh,
years afterwards. He's a clever guy, man.
Yeah, so great to see you guys on screen together. You mentioned directing, and you've mentioned a few of your amazing directors you got to work with. After a series of many action films throughout the 90s and 2000s, started directing yourself, directing acting. We have Lucas Hannon, a fan, saying, "You're a great director. I love The Killing Machine, Missionary Man, Diamond Dogs." I know we mentioned a few, The Defender, The Russian Specialist. You've got a couple, one, not maybe, but definitely one upcoming in 2021. Talk a little bit about why the decision to get into directing these films that you had previously starred in.
Okay, I always helped working on the scripts with directors prior to that,
Sure.
even all the way back to Masters of the Universe. So some of those films I did had story problems, and I was trying to solve them, but I was doing a film called The Defender shooting in Eastern Europe, and the director got sick, and I've been working on a script with him, and the producer said to him, we need a replacement. We start shooting in 3 weeks. And he said, "Why don't you ask Dolph?" And they're like, "Excuse me, who?" And I was, you should ask Dolph. So I took over, did that. Then I did a couple of movies trying to learn the ropes. And then I did about 4 or 5 of them. I gave one every year.
Yeah.
And then Expendables showed up. I got divorced because I lived in Europe from about 2000 to 2010. I was in New York in 2000. I moved to Europe. My ex-wife hated LA, didn't want to be here at all. So she dragged me to New York first, which I love New York, of course. That's where I first came over.
Sure.
Then she dragged me to Spain, Marbella, Spain. I was there for 10 years, which wasn't the greatest thing for my career because, you're kind of removed from the mainstay Hollywood business. So 2010, I got divorced and I moved back to LA, started doing these Expendables movies. Try to get back on the big screen. So that ended my director's career, and then ended up doing Aquaman and Creed 2. So it's only last year that I decided I wanted to direct something. So I found something that, I wrote this little script called Castle Falls. It's just a little movie that's coming out that I'm editing now. It's coming out, later this year, and it's just fun to be a little more creative on all fronts, not just front of the camera, but to decide on music and shots and things like that.
That's so cool. And shout out to the fans at Hulk Rules for Life, Alareza.Hazenpour3. We're all curious about Castle Falls. They're huge fans of yours, so just excited for it to come out. So things are tough now with, is it going to be on theater? Is it going to be on streaming, type of thing? Do you have any idea where we can see it coming up, or is it still kind of in the works?
I have no idea at all. It's very tough what you're saying. I mean, big films are being, $150 million movies are being, premiered on pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Like Wonder Woman too, and movies like that. And obviously unheard of back in the day. So I'm working on I may be doing Aquaman 2 this summer. shooting in London, and that's coming out the following year in the theaters, they hope. But the smaller movies like Castle Falls, it's really hard to tell. I mean, if you get it out on Netflix, that's a good deal. I mean, that could be or Amazon Prime or something like that. You know.
All right. Well, we wait with bated breath. We look forward to it. We love seeing your work. So I want to throw back real quick. A question just came through from Mike Hull. We talked. I mentioned in the intro. We talked about Johnny Mnemonic and also those like kind of sci-fi action films of the '90s. Said you're so good as the preacher. Funny thing about the movie is it's set in 2021, January of 2021. So we're in the time period of Johnny Mnemonic. Talk a little bit about working with Keanu and then just sort of the fun thing that this is what was the future, supposed to be the future of Johnny Mnemonic.
Wow.
Yeah.
How strange.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like 1999 was a big year, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Y2K and all of that. It's 20 years ago already. Yeah, that was 1993. I did that, I think it was.
Yeah. Yep. Good year.
27 years. Let's see. That's
95 was Johnny Mnemonic.
Was it 95? So
yeah.
So it's 25 years ago then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a fun role, this sort of street preacher, and it was directed by an artist from New York. I can't remember his name now. Painter. I got this job to direct the film. I don't know how he got it, but interesting guy. And then, of course, Keanu Reeves was
Robert Longo.
Yeah. Keanu Reeves was not. This is pre Speed, so he wasn't really. He was kind of what's up guy, and I think I was sort of worried about the religious overtones of that character. I remember the producers were worried I was going to protest against the picture and all of that, but I think it worked out pretty well. And it was fun to do some action with Keanu, who back then didn't know anything about action. He, just show him every little move, like he was throwing a punch, everything. Of course, now he's, doing big action movies.
Yeah.
It was, I looked so different, but I had a long blonde wig and a beard, I believe, as well. Yeah, like the kind of Jesus beard.
Yeah.
And I know my agent at the time came to visit me, and it was a night shoot, and I was walking down. We were shooting some big warehouse, and I walked right past him. He didn't recognize me. Hey, David, it's me. He said, what? Holy shit. He didn't read the script as usual. A lot of agents don't, but no, it was a good experience. It was fun for sure. Ice-T was in that too.
Yeah, no, it was a cool, and again, it's another one of those films that was ahead of its time. You know what I mean? And people now are rediscovering again and kind of going back to. Same thing with a lot of the films you've made. Talk about coming back. So obviously a ton of hits in the '80s, ton of hits in the '90s, and then you get to return to a lot of your characters, or we just really return to a lot of that semblance of 80s and 90s with the Expendables 1, 2, and 3, Venomous X1, and a lot of fans are just asking, what was it like when Sly reached out and asked you to return with all of these icons of the 80s and 90s for the Expendables series?
Yeah, I got a call from my agency, Sly wants to talk to you, and I hadn't talked to him for a while. Got on the phone and said, hey, Dolph, we've got the script and want to check it out. So sent the script over. I think you'll like it. And it was like a raven on top of a skull. It looked very Stallone,
very Stallone, yeah.
Full on, like brutality. So I opened and I started reading it, and it was a very good script. It was funny. I mean, it was entertaining.
Yeah.
He's an entertaining writer. He knows exactly the one-liners and the characters. And like page 5, there's like Gunnar Jensen, drunk Swede with a big knife or something like that. Description of the guy. So I don't know who that is. So I had a great time showing up on set. First day he was directing that one, first one, and I showed up and we gave each other a big hug, and it was like, shit, man, I can't believe we're doing this again for both of us, I think, and we had this first, I think the second, third day we shot this face-off scene. The first scene we shot was kind of like this face-down scene in this garage. He gets out of the car, and and I'm told he's going to fire me, and I'll go, I'm good. I'm real good. Don't that line is, and no, I'm good. And I went to, I was going to take something, pull a pendant off his chest or something, and I ended up, in the moment, pushed him a little bit, and he said, cut, and then he goes, the next time, push me harder. That's only Sly would say that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I can hear the crew go, oh, shit. Like, they didn't know, everybody's like, here we go. So then, it was a wonderful ride for those, three pictures with Arnold, who I knew from before, and got to meet guys like Statham, Jet Li, and of course, I knew some of the other guys before as well, but, Wesley Snipes, I met Mel Gibson, and all of those guys. I mean, it's crazy now when I think of it, Jean-Claude. I don't think that'll ever happen again. Maybe on Expendables 4, but probably not. We had, we're all like in one little tent, heating tent in Bulgaria, suiting up. And there's Van Damme, there's Chuck Norris walks in, Arnold comes in, there's me there. And so it was just kind of a homage to the business. And also one of the few films where, guys do their own stunts and do their own fights. And in one way, like I said before, that's unusual these days. And, I think that's why you get a different type of fan, because the fan looks up to the man, not necessarily a character.
Yeah.
If you're just a straight actor, they look up to your work as an actor, like you look up to, I don't know, Al Pacino. He's a great actor, but you don't really, if you go and work out, you don't really put his picture in your locker. Maybe if you want to be like a bad guy, if you want to be a crime boss, you could do it. But I think that's why, some of those old time guys there, it was nice to be kind of people they look up to you for other reasons, not just the movies, but your personal achievements as well.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I know it's a and I mean, just even you describing all those icons coming into a tent together, I know is a dream project, and it was such a fun homage. And Sly did such a good job, of just throwing back, like you said, to those classic films of the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
So cool. I want to talk, we can't wait for Expendables 4, obviously, when that can happen. You talked a little bit about Aquaman and Aquaman 2. So cool to just see you show up. I didn't even know it was coming, and then you pop in on your on your little undersea creature there. Yeah, your sea dragon. And I was like, oh my God, it's Dolph. Natalie Levine was asking just a little bit about the underwater scenes. What was it like filming those and kind of being part of that sequence?
It was certainly a new experience. The only water I ever saw was in my bottle of Evian that I drank. There was no water on set.
Yeah,
it was really very dry. It caused dry for wet. So you hang in a harness and all day, or 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and you move your legs in a certain way, and you talk, and you move around, and then your hair is added later by the computer. The beard, some of it was added in the computer. So it's very, very tedious, but it's a different experience, and it was fun to work with guys. Like the great actors are in that movie. There's Defoe, and there's Patrick Wilson, and of course Jason Momoa, and so I was pleased to actually work in. Well, for me, it was more of a novelty to play like a political figure, play like a king who's talking more about politics and trying to keep the peace and all, instead of kicking ass. So I've done that before. So I was very pleased that James Wan hired me for that. And,
so good.
That was a great experience.
You mentioned just a second ago all the amazing actors, not only in Aquaman, but if we've had throughout our conversation, you've just been dropping the names of these icons of film. Corey Marvin, going back even to your very first cameo, working with Roger Moore on A View to Kill. Is there one person? A lot of people talking about a Nostalgic Pod Blast, talking about Brigitte Nielsen icon. Obviously, is there one person that sticks out to you as like just the most iconic for you as an actor that you've worked with through your 4+ decades of 80+ films? Anybody that stands out to you specifically? I know it's a tough one.
There's so many, but
yeah.
Look, funny you should say that. I do remember Roger Moore quite a bit because
Yeah.
I knew his son from London. I used to go out clubbing where he went out, and he was just such a gracious man, you know, really funny, very, very loving to everybody. He had great timing, and I love his James Bond. Some people don't like his Bond, but I like, you know, Live and Let Die. You know, he's pretty good in there. He in his own way. He's certainly somebody who I got to, you know, later. Of course, he didn't know that this Swedish kid was gonna, you know, become you know, I guess a movie star. Because I was going out with Grace Jones, who was my girlfriend.
Yeah.
In the film, and you know, at Pinewood Studios, we had lunch at the commissary, and he would sit there and smoke a cigar in a wood paneled room, like in a movie. And he always said something like, "You take a, you go, Dolph is larger than Denmark." and I had another, then he married a Danish woman. So I
Hilarious.
with my kids somewhere in Cannes at the festival. My kids were little, and I said, "You guys want to meet James Bond?" And I took them over to his table, and of course they're like, "Dad, that's not James Bond." And I said, "Well, look, there are a few different James Bonds." So he was just saying there, he said, "Surrounded by Scandinavians." So I knew he was just one of those, I mean, for me, I guess he's one of the actors I worked with him and Roy Scheider, like from that old school,
Yeah.
You know, the old sort of Hollywood, that, you know, 50s, from that era. I would say they're the ones that I remember. You know, they're Haviston, you know, they're like real. They were like men. Now I guess the leads in the movies get younger and younger. You know what I mean? It's like William Shatner was he was the captain of Enterprise. You think like if you got a star, what do you call it, star cruiser,
Starship Enterprise.
Yeah, if you got a ship like Enterprise, you want to put a real man in charge. You want to put some kid, like 25-year-old kid there. Screwed up. Back in those days, those guys were a little older, and I guess I identified with that because I reminds me of my dad.
Yeah.
And used to be.
Great to hear these stories. Obviously, a prolific career. Thomas Kirk, Joshua Palace, both asked a similar question. And this is tough. This is like, you know, picking your favorite child, perhaps. But of all your iconic classic roles, is there one that resonates with you the most? Not necessarily the most popular or what you're most known for, but is there one role out of all the favorites that resonates with you the most through your career? I know it's another tough one. I'm hitting you with the hard ones here at the end.
Look, I mean, I'm fond of playing Ivan Drago, this last picture.
Yeah, Creed 2. So good. So good.
It was so unbelievable.
Yeah.
To go back into that role and being such a different person, and it being up in the ring with Sly again, and being able to play the pain and the heartache of this guy that I'd gone through myself after I became famous. And it was like the parallel was almost as good as when Sly plays Rocky. He always parallels to his real life, and that's happened to me too. So that was a real pleasure to play that character. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and we loved it as fans. Creed, the first Creed film, was such a cool twist take, you know, like in the series of the Rocky films, and then to see Ivan Drago come back in Creed 2 was so awesome. So excellent work. Yeah, and to see the arc there of the character, like you mentioned, we loved it. I've got a final question. We're about out of time here. I just want to remind the fans really quickly about those one-on-one experiences. You have about 12 minutes or so, 15 minutes to purchase those live video chats. Dolph's going to be doing them at the top of the next hour. We're obviously give him a little break, and then he'll be heading into his Zoom room, and you can meet one-on-one with Dolph. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Treat yourself, treat a loved one. And then he's also doing video recorded messages and autographs throughout the week as well. But we have a final question here from Denise Montini. On a more personal note, what is the most important advice, life lesson you can give, not only to fans, but something maybe you've taught your daughters that you could impart on the fans that are watching today?
Well, I would say it's never too late. You can always change your career. You can always change your life. You can always get in shape. You can always change your financial situation. You can always ask for forgiveness or forgive someone else. I mean, it's, you know, that is the thing to remember. Don't worry about the past. Just worry about the future.
That's so awesome. Dolph, I want to say personally, this has been an awesome nerd moment for me to talk to you as a huge fan of yours throughout the last decades. I know I speak on behalf of the fans. We have a ton of people watching from around the world. We can't wait to see you in Expendables 4, Aquaman 2, your upcoming film Castle Falls. We also get to hear you in Minions, The Rise of Gru. So that's going to be fun as well to sort of hear your voice. Any final shout outs for the fans or things we should check you out on before we kind of sign off?
No, I think it's been a great run so far, and I love meeting my fans. I love talking to them. I realized as I got older, that's the reason I'm getting this in the first place.
Yeah.
It's to make people feel good. I didn't know that. Why did I choose this career? But I realized it's to connect with other human beings and try to make them feel good, and try to make them, to entertain them, to kind of lighten up their lives, and that's kind of what I've done for the last, try to do for 40 years. So I hopefully, I hope we'll do it for another many years.
Yeah, we can't wait. And you have definitely done that. And even just joining us today and hanging out with us has touched a ton of fans. And I know a bunch are going to be coming into those one-on-one chats in just a bit. So thank you so much. Shout out to 5D Blog. You can check them out, 5dblog.com. They did a bunch of promotion for Dolph today. Join us tomorrow at Wizard World for some of our favorite voiceover stars from the animation world, Nickelodeon, Disney Toons. We have Lark Voorhees and Morgan Fairchild coming up, Hatchet and Candyman, and Legally Blonde in February. But join me one more time in a round of emojis, a round of applause, a bowing down in honor to this legendary icon, Mr. Dolph Lundgren, everybody. Let's hear it one more time. Thank you, Dolph. This has been great. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, man.
Vault.com, wizardworldvault.com. Click on that picture of the Dolph Lundgren experience and get those one-on-one chats. They're on sale for the next 10-15 minutes. And then those autographs, video recorded messages will be happening as well. This has been a blast. I've been your host, Mike G. Follow us at Wizard World on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and we'll see you next time. Have a great Saturday, everybody.